Lily pressed her hands against the fabric of her old coat as the cold morning wind bit through the thin material. She had woken up before dawn, as she always did, carefully feeding the stray animals that had become her only family. Her small, rundown shack on the outskirts of the city was nothing more than a forgotten storage unit she had repurposed into a shelter. Despite its battered walls and lack of heating, it was home to her two loyal dogs, four affectionate cats, and a parrot with a broken wing. They depended on her, just as she depended on them for comfort. Today was an important day. Today, she had one more chance to change her fate. With a deep breath, she adjusted the barely working hearing aid in her ear and stepped onto the bus that would take her to the city's most prestigious hotel, the Evergrande. Lily had never imagined she would end up applying for a cleaning job. She had spent years earning a degree in finance, hoping to one day work as a consultant in a successful company. But life had a cruel way of making dreams seem unattainable. Every interview she had attended ended the same way: polite smiles followed by a rejection email. It was never her qualifications. It was always the unspoken reason she knew too well. "We appreciate your time, but unfortunately, we are moving forward with another candidate." She could read the words on their lips before they were even spoken. No one wanted to hire a deaf woman for a corporate role. In their minds, she was incapable, a liability. No matter how intelligent or hardworking she was always overlooked. The last company she had applied to had gone as far as to suggest she apply for a secretary position instead, a role that wouldn't require much verbal interaction. So here she was, walking through the grand glass doors of the Evergrande, applying for a job far beneath her skill set, because dignity did not pay rent and pride would not feed her animals. The moment she entered, she felt the judgmental eyes of the front desk clerk sweep over her attire. Her coat was clean but well worn, her shoes scuffed from walking miles to save on bus fare. Still, she straightened her shoulders and approached the hiring desk, where a woman in a navy blue uniform looked up with practiced disinterest. "Name?" the woman asked. Lily's lips moved slowly as she pronounced each syllable carefully. "Lily Carter, here for the cleaning staff position." The woman barely glanced at her before shoving a clipboard in her direction. "Fill this out. We need someone immediately, so if you can start today, that would be great." Lily nodded and took a seat, her fingers trembling slightly as she filled in the application. She was overqualified, but there was no room for pride. She needed this job, needed to afford food not just for herself, but for the helpless animals waiting for her at home. Once she handed in the paperwork, the woman barely skimmed through it before standing up. "Follow me." Lily trailed behind her, weaving through the lavish hotel halls. The walls were adorned with crystal chandeliers and gold-trimmed mirrors. Everything sparkled. Everything screamed luxury. It was ironic that she would be cleaning a place where she could never afford to stay. They arrived at the housekeeping office, where a man in his late 40s, dressed in a crisp uniform, eyed her with indifference. "You're Lily? The new maid?" His name tag read Daniel Rogers, head of housekeeping. She nodded, understanding his words, more from the way his lips formed than the actual sound. "You'll start immediately," he continued. "Rooms need to be spotless, and I don't tolerate laziness. No slacking off, understood?" "Yes, sir," Lily said, keeping her expression neutral. "Good. Uniforms are in the back. Your shift starts in 10 minutes. Lily changed into the standard maid uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron. It fit her awkwardly, the fabric stiff against her skin. She pulled her hair into a neat ponytail and took a deep breath. Just get through today, one day at a time. Her first few hours passed in a blur of scrubbing, dusting, and changing linens. The work was exhausting, but not difficult. The worst part was the way people looked at her. Some guests barely acknowledged her presence, treating her as if she were invisible. Others whispered comments she could easily read from their lips. "She doesn't talk much, must be slow. Did you see her? She's kind of pretty, but she looks poor. New maids never last long here. She'll be gone in a week." Lily clenched her fists, but kept her expression blank. She had faced far worse than careless whispers. She could handle this. By the end of her shift, her body ached, but her mind was sharper than ever. Cleaning the rooms gave her an unexpected advantage. She noticed things others didn't: receipts left behind, open laptops displaying financial reports, half-shredded documents in the trash. Small details that would mean nothing to most people. But to someone with a trained eye for numbers, they told a story. And something about that story didn't sit right. In one of the executive suites, she found a document carelessly left on the desk. It was a financial report detailing hotel expenses, but the numbers didn't make sense. The profit margins were shrinking, and the recorded expenses seemed oddly inflated. Cleaning supplies listed at 3 times their market value, unexplained cash withdrawals, salaries paid to employees who didn't exist. Her heart pounded. This wasn't just mismanagement. This was theft. She had no proof, and no one would believe a maid, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen. If the hotel's owner found out, heads would roll. She had only been here for a day, and she had already uncovered something huge. But what could she do? If she spoke up, she risked being fired, or worse, framed for something she hadn't done. If she stayed quiet, she would be just another invisible worker in the background, watching a crime unfold without intervention. As she collected her cleaning supplies, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her uniform made her look like just another nameless employee. But she was more than that. She was smart. She was capable. And for the first time in a long while, she had found something worth fighting for. Lily Carter was not going to let this go. She would be careful. She would be patient. And she would find a way to expose the truth. Even if no one saw her now, soon, they would have no choice but to notice her. Lily had always been good at going unnoticed. It was a survival skill she had honed over the years, perfected through rejection and necessity. In the grand halls of the Evergrande Hotel, she was invisible, just another maid pushing a cleaning cart, overlooked by guests and ignored by staff. But that invisibility was her greatest asset. As she scrubbed floors and changed linens, she listened, not with her ears, but with her eyes. Lily had mastered the art of reading lips long ago, and it had become second nature. She saw the way her coworkers whispered about her, the way the front desk clerks rolled their eyes when she passed by. She's so slow. Maybe she doesn't understand us. She never talks, probably hiding something. She won't last a month here. Their words cut, but Lily had endured worse. She kept her head down and focused on her work. She needed this job, at least until she could figure out her next move. But one evening, when she was cleaning one of the executive suites, she stumbled upon something that made her pause. The suite belonged to Gerald Morris, the hotel's manager. He was a well-dressed man in his late 50s, always carrying an air of superiority. The staff whispered about his temper and his tendency to pocket extra cash, but no one ever dared to question him. That night, as Lily wiped down his desk, her eyes fell on a stack of papers, financial reports, receipts, and what appeared to be payroll documents. She wasn't supposed to look, but she did. The numbers didn't add up. Lily had spent years studying finance. She knew how to spot discrepancies, and what she saw in those papers sent a chill down her spine. The cleaning supply expenses were inflated, staff salaries were inconsistent, and there were massive withdrawals marked as miscellaneous expenses. Morris was stealing from the hotel, and no one had noticed. Lily's hands trembled as she set the papers back in place. She had only been here for a few days, and already she had uncovered something huge. If she exposed him, would anyone believe her? She was just a maid, a disposable worker in the eyes of management. But if she stayed quiet, she would be allowing a thief to continue bleeding the hotel dry. She had to do something, but she had to be smart. That night, while the rest of the staff finished their shifts and went home, Lily stayed behind. She had memorized Morris's schedule. He left the hotel every evening at precisely 10 p.m. By 10:30, she was in his office, her heart pounding as she rifled through his drawers. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. More documents? A flash drive? Anything that could confirm what she already knew. Then her fingers brushed against something, a small notebook tucked beneath a stack of folders. She flipped it open and scanned the handwritten notes inside. Dates, amounts, names. A list of transactions that didn't appear in the official reports. This was it. Proof. A sudden noise in the hallway made her snap the notebook shut. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Lily barely had time to shove the book back into the drawer before the office door creaked open. She ducked behind the desk, pressing herself into the shadows as the light flicked on. Morris. He muttered to himself as he shuffled inside, heading straight for the minibar. Lily held her breath, counting the seconds. If he so much as glanced down, he would see her. After what felt like an eternity, he grabbed a glass of whiskey and left, slamming the door behind him. Lily waited another minute before slowly creeping out from her hiding spot. Her hands were clammy, her pulse erratic, but she had done it. She had what she needed. Now, she just had to figure out what to do next. The next few days, Lily worked as if nothing had changed. She cleaned rooms, folded towels, and avoided eye contact with Morris. But at night, she returned to his office, gathering more evidence. Every transaction, every forged signature, every falsified expense. She copied them down, memorized details, and slowly pieced together the full extent of the fraud. She had no allies, no one to confide in. She couldn't afford to trust anyone. If the wrong person found out what she was doing, she could be fired, or worse, blamed for something she hadn't done. But she wasn't going to stop. Each night she worked in silence, piecing together the puzzle. Morris thought no one was watching, but Lily saw everything. And soon, she would make sure the right person did too. Lily continued her nighttime investigations, meticulously combing through financial records, making notes, and memorizing patterns of fraud. She had collected enough information to know that Gerald Morris wasn't just stealing. He was running a complex embezzlement scheme that had been draining the hotel's funds for years. But she still needed undeniable proof, something so concrete that even the most skeptical authority couldn't dismiss it. She thought she was being careful, covering her tracks, avoiding suspicion. But someone had noticed her. Alex Evergrande, the son of the hotel's owner, had seen her several times wandering the hallways at night. At first, he assumed she was just working late. But as the days passed, he found it odd that she was always alone, always lingering near the executive offices. Curious, he decided to check the hotel's security footage. As he sat in his office, scrolling through hours of recordings, he expected to see nothing more than a maid attending to her duties. Instead, what he found intrigued him. Every night, long after most employees had left, Lily returned to Morris's office. Sometimes she entered for only a few minutes, other times for nearly an hour. She never took anything, never tampered with visible equipment. But she was clearly searching for something. And when she wasn't in the office, she was somewhere nearby, watching, waiting. What was she looking for? The more Alex watched, the more convinced he became that this wasn't random. One evening, after reviewing yet another clip of Lily exiting Morris's office, Alex made a decision. He needed to see for himself what she was up to. He left his office and took the quietest route toward the executive wing, making sure to stay out of sight. He knew Morris wasn't in the building tonight. His father had mentioned that the manager was attending a business dinner. If Lily was going to act, it would be tonight. As expected, he spotted her in the hallway, her small frame barely visible under the dim emergency lights. She moved quickly but carefully, checking the hallway before slipping into the office. Alex waited a moment, then followed. Inside the office, Lily was focused. She had found another suspicious set of records, a list of payments for services that didn't exist. She ran her fingers over the numbers, her trained mind instantly recognizing the signs of fabricated expenses. She had almost pieced everything together. Then, she felt it, a presence. She turned sharply, her heart hammering against her ribs. Alex stood in the doorway watching her. Lily froze. She couldn't hear his footsteps, hadn't seen his approach, and now he was blocking her only way out. Fear gripped her. If he thought she was stealing, if he reported her, everything she had worked for would be over. She didn't know what to do. Should she run? Try to explain? Deny everything? But Alex didn't look angry. He looked curious. He lifted his hands slightly as if to show he meant no harm, then slowly spoke. What are you doing here? Lily could only make out the words because he was facing her directly, but her mind was racing too fast to form a response. Alex took a step closer. I've seen you here before, every night in this office. You're not stealing, so what are you looking for? Lily's fingers tightened around the papers in her hands. She hesitated. Then, realizing she had no other choice, she carefully set them down and pointed at the numbers. Then, she looked back at Alex, hoping he would understand. He frowned and stepped forward to examine the documents. His expression changed as he scanned the figures, and for the first time, she saw realization dawn on his face. Morris, he muttered under his breath. This is fraud. Lily nodded. Alex looked at her, and for the first time, he saw past the uniform, past the silent exterior. He saw intelligence, determination. She had found what no one else had, and now, together, they had to decide what to do next. Alex knew they couldn't confront Morris without solid proof, something undeniable that would force his father to take action. This isn't enough, he told Lily, flipping through the financial records she had gathered. We need to catch him in the act. Lily frowned. She had risked everything to collect this evidence, and yet it still wasn't enough. But Alex had a point. Numbers on a page could be explained away, manipulated. They needed more. I'm going to install hidden cameras in his office, Alex continued. If he's as corrupt as we think, he won't stop now. We just need to catch him in real time. Lily hesitated. She wasn't sure how she felt about involving Alex further. If Morris found out what they were doing, both of them would be in danger. But she also knew this was their best chance. She nodded. Over the next few days, Alex set up the cameras. Under the guise of a routine security check, he placed them in strategic locations, inside a decorative clock on the desk, behind a book on the shelf, even within the air vent above Morris's chair. They were small, undetectable, and recorded everything. Lily continued her usual work, pretending nothing had changed. But inside, her nerves were on edge. She couldn't help but glance at Morris every time she passed him in the hallways. He was oblivious, still smug, still treating everyone around him like they were beneath him. He had no idea his downfall was coming. 3 days later, they had what they needed. Alex called Lily to his office late at night. He had spent the evening reviewing the footage, and what he found was worse than they had imagined. Morris wasn't just embezzling money, he was taking bribes from vendors, altering supply costs, and even forging his boss's signature on contracts. The video showed him counting stacks of cash, discussing side deals over the phone, and shredding documents late at night. This is it, Alex said, turning to Lily. We have him. Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. But now came the hardest part, exposing him without getting caught. The next morning, Alex took the evidence to his father. Mr. Evergrande was a stern man, always focused on business, and Alex knew convincing him wouldn't be easy. But as soon as he saw the footage, his expression darkened. When was this recorded? He demanded. Over the last 3 days, Alex replied. He's been doing this for years, Dad. Lily found the financial inconsistencies first. She risked everything to bring this to light. Mr. Evergrande's gaze shifted to Lily, who stood silently by the door. He studied her, as if seeing her for the first time. You were the one who uncovered this? He asked. Lily nodded. He exhaled sharply and turned back to the screen. Morris is finished. The confrontation happened later that day. Morris was called into the office, unaware of what was coming. As soon as he entered, Mr. Evergrande played the footage. Morris's face drained of color. This is ridiculous. I can explain. Save it, Mr. Evergrande cut him off coldly. I trusted you with my business. You betrayed that trust. Security arrived within minutes, escorting Morris out of the building. The staff watched in shock, whispering amongst themselves as the once powerful manager was thrown out in disgrace. Lily stood at a distance, watching as justice was finally served. Later that evening, Mr. Evergrande called her into his office again. You're wasted as a maid, he said simply. Someone with your skills and intelligence shouldn't be cleaning rooms. I need someone I can trust to watch over the finances. How would you like to work as a financial consultant? Lily's breath caught in her throat. Was this really happening? She had spent years being overlooked, underestimated. And now, the opportunity she had always dreamed of was right in front of her. But doubt crept in. Could she do this? Would people take her seriously? Mr. Evergrande seemed to read her hesitation. You don't have to answer now, he said, but you deserve better than this. Think about it. Lily swallowed hard. For the first time in her life, someone with power believed in her. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to believe in herself too. Lily had spent years living in survival mode, barely making ends meet, scraping by in a world that refused to see her. But now, everything had changed. The day she moved into her new apartment, she stood in the doorway for a long moment, unable to believe it was real. It was small but beautiful. Warm lighting, polished wooden floors, and most importantly, space for her animals. Her dogs ran excitedly across the room, their tails wagging, while her cats cautiously inspected every corner. Even her parrot, perched on her shoulder, let out an approving chirp. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Life at the Evergrande had also changed. With Morris gone and corruption rooted out, the hotel's financial health began to recover. Employees noticed the shift. Paychecks were accurate, supplies were no longer mysteriously overpriced, and a sense of trust returned among the staff. Lily, now working as a financial consultant, poured herself into her job. Numbers had always made sense to her in a way that people often didn't. She spent late nights analyzing spreadsheets, optimizing expenses, and ensuring that not a single dollar was wasted. Her work did not go unnoticed. 6 months after taking the position, Mr. Evergrande promoted her to Chief Financial Officer. The very thought of it had once seemed impossible, but here she was, sitting in a glass-walled office overlooking the city, making decisions that shaped the future of the hotel. She had proven everyone wrong. One evening, after an exhausting workday, Lily stepped out onto the rooftop terrace to clear her mind. The city stretched out before her, glowing in the night. She didn't hear Alex approach, but she felt his presence when he sat beside her. You've changed everything, he said, his voice filled with admiration. Lily smiled. Not everything. He turned to her, his expression softer than she had ever seen. I mean it, Lily. You saved this place. You saved me from making a terrible mistake by trusting Morris. I don't know what this hotel would be without you. A warmth spread through her chest. Over the months, their professional partnership had deepened into something more. Alex had become her confidant, her biggest supporter. He had never treated her as less than anyone else. He saw her for who she truly was. As he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. A year later, they were married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and colleagues. The whispers of judgment, how could the son of a wealthy hotelier marry a former maid, didn't matter. What mattered was the way Alex looked at her, as if she was the most extraordinary person in the world. Together, they continued to build a future not just for themselves, but for those who needed a second chance. One of Alex's wedding gifts to Lily was something deeply personal, a fully funded animal shelter in her name, a place where strays like the ones she had saved could find warmth, safety, and love. When she saw it for the first time, she cried, overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding. You never have to choose between your career and the things that matter to you, Alex told her that day. You can have both. And she did. One evening, as she stood in their home, stroking one of her cats, she opened a letter from her doctor. She read it once, then again, her breath catching in her throat. She was pregnant. Tears welled in her eyes as she placed a hand on her stomach, the realization settling in. A new chapter was beginning. Alex found her moments later, concern flashing across his face when he saw the tears. Lily, what's wrong? She turned to him, smiling through her tears, and handed him the letter. As he read, his eyes widened before a slow, joyful grin spread across his face. You're going to be a dad, she signed, knowing he had been learning sign language for her. Alex pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I always knew you were special, he whispered. But this is everything. As they stood together, surrounded by the life they had built, Lily realized something profound. She had spent so long believing the world had no place for her, but she had carved one out anyway. What do you think about Lily's journey? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to prove yourself against the odds? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible stories.